Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Rico, and this is Relatively Sound, the channel that speaks without words. On today's episode, I am back to review the latest album from rock band Death Cab for Cutie, and it is entitled I Built You a Tower. I Built You a Tower is the band's 11th studio album, and their first album since 2022's Asphalt Meadows. When it came to Asphalt Meadows, I think a lot of Death Cab fans really enjoyed the album, but I'm probably in the minority that enjoyed it so much that I not only considered it to be the band's best album since their album Narrow Stairs, but it's also my second favorite Death Cab for Cutie album. And because Narrow Stairs is my favorite Death Cab album, I also think it is better than Transatlanticism, Fight Me. I think the reason I liked Asphalt Meadows so much is because it really felt like the band kind of discovered who they were after Chris Walla left the band, not only when it came to production, but just songwriting, instrumentals, lyrics, pretty much everything on that album I enjoyed. I mean, I think it's a nearly flawless album. Besides one song, I pretty much love every song. And I do think that it is hard for a band who's been releasing music for over 20 years to put out one of their best albums this far late into the career. And there's only a couple of bands that I enjoy that I think have done that. Bands like Pearl Jam and The Killers. So hats off to them for releasing Asphalt Meadows when they did, because I think it is an extraordinary album. Now, when it came to this album, I Built You a Tower, I did go into it kind of setting the bar a little lower than I normally would for a band like Death Cab, only because I enjoyed their last album so much. So when they released their first single from the album, Riptides, I kind of got a similar sense from the single that I did when they released Roman Candles from Asphalt Meadows as that album's first single. I listened to it and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a track that really wowed me from a first listen. And I will say it is one of those songs that has grown on me like Roman Candles, because both songs I think are better listened to in the context of the album, more so than like a lead single. When they released the second single, Punching the Flowers, that was definitely more surprising. Just the overall tone of the song, how heavy it was, the distorted guitars, the kind of off-putting riff, the punchy drums, and I was definitely more excited for this song. Although again, it was kind of a grower. It wasn't a song like Here to Forever where it's one of those radio singles that you could just listen to over and over. It almost doesn't feel like it should be a single at all. But that's why I enjoyed it being released as a single, because it seemed a little gutsy to release a song like this. Going into the rest of the album, I was a little unsure how it was going to sound. But like most fans, I think I was able to predict the lyrics on the album. And that's because a lot of the songs have to do with Ben Gibbard's second divorce. And it's kind of hard when you compare this album to Kintsugi, which was his first divorce album, because that also felt like a divorce from Chris Walla, because although he wrote some songs on the album, he didn't produce it. It was the first album not produced by him. And that's why this album felt musically more like what Death Cab has been sounding since Kintsugi. Lyrically, it is very much a heartbreak album, and I think on some songs it works perfectly, and on other songs I think maybe a little cliche, a little bit been here, done that. And I will go through track by track a little bit more, but I think I'm a little bit more impressed by the songs musically than lyrically. Again, like a lot of albums these days, it's a relatively short album. It doesn't overstay its runtime, which is great. And I will say there's some songs that punch a little harder than songs from Asphalt Meadows. You have Envy the Birds with its really dramatic guitars and pacing. You have the most surprising track on the album, How Heavenly Estate. That sounds like something a mix between The Smile and The Talking Heads. And you have some other songs that I think also pack a good punch, like the lead single Riptides, and even something like Punching the Flowers. But unlike Asphalt Meadows, I don't know if there's like a perfect song on this album. Where Asphalt Meadows, Foxglove Through the Clear Cut is my second favorite Death Cab song of all time. So I think that's a perfect song. The title track, I think, from Asphalt Meadows is amazing. I really like Wheat Like Waves, Fragments from the Decade. Like, there's a lot of songs on that album that I just absolutely love. And I will say I haven't given this album as many listens as something like Asphalt Meadows. I mean, this album just came out days ago, and usually I will kind of give it more of a full week to do a review. But I was going to be pretty busy with work this week, and I just wanted to be able to release this review a little sooner than way later like I did with last album reviews. So maybe I'll do a video or a short in the future where I kind of give some thoughts about how this album has grown on me. But from a first like 5 or 6 listens, I will say these songs don't match up to the songs on Asphalt Meadows for me. I think the best way for me to describe this album is that it's a better version of Thank You for Today, which was their first album after Chris Walla left the band. Thank You for Today is an interesting album because it has some solid songs, but I think it is one of the band's weaker albums. It doesn't feel as cohesive. There's some songs that I think are just kind of lacking when it comes to the writing. It seems like maybe the songs were a little underbaked or underproduced. And then there's some songs on there that I just don't ever really return to. But I Built You a Tower, I feel like is more like Thank You for Today because there's songs that are a little safer, and then there's some songs that are like a little bit more outside of the band's normal sound. Where Asphalt Meadows felt just like a very solid Death Cab album. Like, I feel like besides Foxglove or maybe like The Bridge and I'm a Strangers, there's nothing about that album that seemed like, whoa, they're doing something really different. Where on I Built You a Tower, they're definitely trying some new things out. So I'm going to get into some of the songs now. I am going to talk about maybe the songs that didn't work for me as much first, because there's not a lot of them that I didn't enjoy, and there's no song that I like dislike, but there are a couple that I think could have been a little stronger. I think one song that surprised me by a lot of fans' reactions positively is Trapdoor. A lot of people are saying that's like their best song in 10 years, or their best song since Chris has left the band. I definitely disagree. I think, for one, musically, it's a little weaker because I don't really love that kind of like 80s synth sound that basically runs through the entire runtime of the song. And lyrically, I think it's the weakest song on the album. There are a couple decent lines. I do like the line about a snowflake starting an avalanche. I do like the line about only the winners write history. But like the main chorus, that there's a trapdoor in your heart and I'm falling through, I just felt that was a little corny. It didn't really resonate with me. And the song doesn't really progress anywhere. It's kind of just like the main verse and chorus. And although I don't love every single bridge on this album, I think the song would have benefited from a bridge. But this song just doesn't do a lot for me. It's kind of, to me, like a Everything's a Ceiling, which is by far my least favorite song from Kintsugi. Both of these songs kind of have like the more maybe upbeat or, maybe a little bit more hopeful sound, more than lyrically they're like kind of sad, or, maybe they're like, Ben's trying to pick himself up. And those type of songs just don't do a lot for me. And I kind of feel the same way about the third single released from this album, Stone Over Water. Kind of starts with this drum machine sound, which I get having different drum textures on this album, but like Jason's a beast, and almost on every other song, his drums sound amazing. On this song, I think they're just lacking a little bit. And the main like riff and progression just seems like so paint by numbers Death Cab. It really reminds me of Your Hurricane from Thank You for Today, which is a song that I enjoy and I know a lot of people love, but it's so paint by numbers Death Cab that like I think it's just a little boring. At least for them. Like if it was another band song, I think it would be very pleasant. For them, it's just like I know they can do better. And surprisingly, another song that hasn't grown a lot on me so far in the first couple listens is the album opening track, Full of Stars. Again, it's another song that I can understand why people really enjoy it. It's more stripped back. It's got the piano flourishes. It's got the acoustic guitar. And I do like some of the lyrics. I like the All I Need You Is to Be Kind to Me. But it's a song where, first of all, it doesn't feel like an opening track. I feel like it's trying to do what No Room in Frame did for Kintsugi, which was to open in a very subtle nod and then kind of build as the song goes on. And that song, I love the writing, I love the lyrics, I love the instrumentation, the chord progression. The Full Stars has a nice chord progression, but I do feel it's lacking in the build because near the end of the song, you do kind of get the drums and the electric guitar, and I feel like it's about to build into something else, into something slightly better, and then it stops. And maybe that's what they were going for an opening track, but it almost felt like this would have been a better closing track. Or it would have been a better opening track if it built something like a Bixby Canyon Bridge, which happens to be my favorite Death Cab song. It just left me wanting more overall. That's why we didn't get the rest of the album. It's kind of surprising because the second track is Punching the Flowers, which again is a song I was not expecting to hear from Death Cab. For starters, it has maybe some of Jason's best sounding drums. They're super punchy. I love the beat. It kind of reminds me of like a Radiohead track, like something like a Weird Fishes. But then when the heavy guitars come in, it sounds completely different than what you're expecting. Again, really minor chord sound, really mean riffs, dirty bass line. But it kind of comes and goes with like the rhythm of the guitars. The guitars and bass stop and go where the drums are always solid throughout. And there's moments where it's just the drums, and I do really like those dropouts. And lyrically, the song is a lot more interesting because it's like he is going through his divorce, but in a third person. And I like that. And I like the imagery of just punching the flowers. Like, it seems like you're kind of hopeless and you're kind of stuck in a rut, but he's describing it in a way more interesting way. This is definitely a song that has grown on me a lot, and I could see this being a favorite of mine the more and more I listen to this album. I think the song that surprised me the most and probably will surprise fans the most is the track How Heavenly Estate. You get started with those fuzzy guitar feedback, very chaotic. And then you get Nick's super heavy bass line just going bump, bump, bump. And you're just like, where's this song going to go? And then Ben's vocals come in and you're still kind of unsure. And then those kind of like almost polka, offbeat, just weird, I don't know if it's like a diminished chord or whatever, but like it comes in and you're not expecting it. It's very harsh, but I think that's the point of the song. Like, a song being titled Heavenly Estate and then get hit with this type of music is off-putting, but in a really cool way. Like, again, it's something exciting from the band. They're doing something different. And, you know, this being their 11th studio album, sometimes bands they run out of ideas. And I do think this song being written by Dave and Nick is a much-needed breath of fresh air, because I think sometimes Ben's writing can get a little stale, and this song is like opposite of that. Lyrically too, I like that it's a little bit more mysterious. You kind of don't know what he's singing about. Again, I think if you read into it in the context of his divorce, it's just one of his many emotions that he's been going through. But man, when that electric guitar riff comes in, really reminds me of something from the Smile. I don't know if it's Thin Thing or it's something from that first Smile album, but it's fantastic. To me, it's like the best part of the song besides like the groove. Reminds a little bit of like Two Talking Heads of like Robert Fripp on something like from Remain in Light, like Born Under Punches. The whole song's chaotic. I think the only thing that I don't love is the bridge, because I feel like it takes away from the overall energy of the song. It's kind of like what they did with I Miss Strangers, which is my least favorite part of that song, which is like you have a really heavy verse and chorus, and then they kind of bring it down for maybe a little too long of a time. But then when they go back into that riff and verse, it sounds even heavier than before, and that part I really appreciate. I definitely could see this song being a banger live. And maybe what is my favorite song currently right now is Envy for the Birds. This is one on our first listen that I'm like, oh, I enjoy this. And then like literally every listen since, I like love it more and more. Starts off with these kind of faster strum guitars with these interesting chords. It's in a different time signature than 4/4, which a lot of these songs on this album are, which I think makes this album more interesting. But on this song, it flows really like fluidly, like it's not as jarring as something like How Heavenly Estate. But I love how dramatic the chords are. It seems like Ben's vocals on this song and the whole album are maybe some of his stronger vocals. The one thing I really like about this album overall is that I feel like with his vocals, he's hitting a lot of falsettos that sound as clean as ever. I think that the older you get, the harder it is to hit falsetto. But for him, I think it sounds better than ever. And maybe not always his melodies are the catchiest or like the hookiest, but his vocals on a lot of these songs sound very clean, very sharp. And Envy for the Birds, especially when you get to that chorus, they sound fantastic. One, because when you have the verse, the music is very dramatic. It's like a Pity and Fear, which is one of my favorite songs off of Narrow Stairs. It's like keeps you on the edge of your seat. But then when you get to the chorus of Envy the Birds, like his vocal melody hits these couple notes that are just sweet and pleasant. And the music's a little bit more calming. You have the picked out guitar chords. And this is like I feel like the moment on the album where I'm hearing something that I could just listen to for hours and hours at a time. Where something like How Heavenly a State I really enjoy, but I have to be kind of in the right mindset for it. And I really like the lyrics too on Envy the Birds. The speaking without words is cool. I mean, of course, you have like the bird imagery, which I like, but I also really like the line, "It took so long to get nowhere." Again, I'm sure he's coming from a very personal place in his life, but I feel like that's a line that could be interpreted many ways or can resonate with a listener different ways than what was intended. The only thing that makes this not like a perfect song for me is that the song is definitely the longest song on the album, but it's not super long. But halfway through the song, it switches to like a B section that feels like it's going to be a bridge, but it ends up becoming the rest of the song's outro. And I was a little disappointed because even though I like the more subdued melodies and the pacing, it gets a little repetitive. The lyrics, he repeats them over and over. And even though you do get these kind of cool, almost guitar slides near the end, I feel like there's not enough to justify how long of an outro it is. I do like it overall. I think it's just a little too long. I kind of wish he went back into the verse and chorus, or they just kind of cut the outro in half. But still a really great song that I don't see enough love for online. I think this is going to be the sleeper track on the album for sure. And maybe surprisingly, one of my other favorite songs is called The Flavor of Metal, the penultimate track. The reason that I think this is surprising for me to enjoy is because this is kind of poppy. This is kind of poppy like a Everything's a Ceiling, or kind of like poppy like a Trap Door, or something from Thank You for Today, like Near/Far, Your Hurricane. But this one I think does it in a much better way. There's a real cool bass line from Nick that kind of begins the song. You have these picked out guitar pages, very clean sounding. Reminds me of REM, Peter Buck's playing, which Death Cab, one of their favorite bands I know is REM, so that makes sense. It's just the melodies on the song are really infectious. The verse features lyrics that are very interesting. The first line is him talking about how he was scared of razor blades and candy, so every time he tastes something sweet, it reminds him of the flavor of metal. And the rest of the song is just like him calling back to like childhood memories that maybe aren't like fun memories. Like he's talking, in the chorus, he's singing about like trying to hide from the rain. And in the bridge, which is one of my favorite bridges on the album, it kind of swells higher and higher, the music and Ben's vocals. He's singing about how it takes a little light to find its way through the cracks. So it's kind of it starts off as kind of like a downer song lyrically, but ends up being a little bit more hopeful. And musically, it's very hopeful. It's a very bright song on the album. And I think you need that, especially because the closing track is one of their darkest sounding songs. And because you have a lot of other darker sounding songs on the beginning of the album. And then you do have Pep Talk, which I really won't get into too much because it's also kind of like a Stone Over Water, where I think it's not their most exciting song because it sounds so, stereotypical Death Cab sounding. But I will say that I think this is one that will grow on me over time. I do like how bright it is. It is a very clean sounding song. I do really like Ben's higher falsettos in the chorus. And lyrically, I do like how the song's called Pep Talk, and it's him basically giving himself a pep talk throughout the whole song. I think it is a much needed song on the album, especially because a lot of the album is kind of darker or more somber. I just don't think it's as exciting as some of these other songs I've mentioned. But it's a decent track. I think the more I listen to it, the more I'll enjoy it. Something like a Full of Stars as well. And then you do have two title tracks on this album. You have I Built You a Tower A and then I Built You a Tower B. A is the first one on the album, and this is kind of also in that realm of this sounds like super typical Death Cab, but I think this sounds a little bit more old school Death Cab. Maybe not like first three album wise, but around like a Transatlanticism. Like I think this has kind of like an Expo 86 vibe, which is one of my favorites from that album. It's a very catchy sounding song with its clean guitar lines. It really has that indie rock sound. It's laid back, but it almost feels smart, if that makes sense. Like it's not your typical pop rock song. And like this one lyrically, once I read that the reason he named this album and song was based off of him seeing life as like if you're looking at a skyline, each like moment in your life is like a tower. And I really like that aspect because when I saw the title of the album, I thought it really had to do with his marriage, but I think it's more just so in life, and that I can definitely appreciate. And this is a song that like it has another really good bridge, but it doesn't take a lot of risk, but it's a very nice song. It's an even more enjoyable pep talk. But then you have the album closing track, which is the same song, but it's B. And that's because it has a completely different instrumental from the A version of the song. And not just different instrumental, but different lyrics too. Even though it shares the same title, it seems like part B of the title track, the album closer, this one is about his divorce, where the first one is maybe more just about life. And this song is one of their darkest sounding songs. This actually does remind me of something from the first couple albums. It's a little bit more lo-fi in the production, very minor chord song, some dirty riffs, like the guitars are kind of very like overdriven. And it just like as it goes on, like it just seems like it kind of gets darker. And it ends with maybe like the most kind of angry sounding lyrics on the album, which is him singing about how it makes him so tired and he just keeps repeating it. And I almost wish we had one more rock song that featured more lyrics like this, because even though I really like How a Heavenly State and a Envy the Birds, I wish there was another song kind of like this or like Punching the Flowers. I do think there could have been an extra little angstier song, but I do appreciate I Built You a Tower B. I still don't know if it would have been the closing track if I did the track list myself. I still think I almost would have made the opening track, Full of Stars, be the closing track. I don't know what would have opened this album. I do think maybe like the tracks flow nicely into one another, but it's just like the first and last track almost seem a little out of place. But overall, I did really enjoy this album. I knew it wasn't going to reach the heights of Asphalt Meadows for me. And again, I know that might be an unpopular opinion because it seems like a lot of fans enjoyed that album, but liked it less than me. But I'm okay with that because this is still a great album. This is basically a much better version of Thank You for Today. And I think it's one that'll grow on me. Like Asphalt Meadows didn't have to grow on me because I just really loved it from a first listen. I mean, the only song I didn't like on it was Pepper, and it's still my least favorite. But unfortunately, this album has a couple songs like Pepper for me, like Trapdoor, Stone Over Water, almost even like a pep talk. Those ones, I feel like they're trying to be a little poppier, a little like lighter. And it's those songs where I think Death Cab, they either need to go fully acoustic and fully like a lighter sound like Full of Stars, or just get heavier like Envy the Birds, How Heavenly Estate. But I do enjoy that this album rocked out a little bit more. I enjoy that it maybe had more dynamics and more risk. I don't know if it's not as cohesive as Asphalt Meadows, which again sounds like I'm saying the flaw is also its like brightest point. But it is hard to take so many risks and to like make the other songs that sound safe not sound maybe as sterile. And I think that's maybe the slight fault of this record is that because you have an Envy of the Birds, the Trapdoors and the Pep Talks and the Stone Over Waters just seem a little bit more watered down. But if you're going to check out this album, definitely check out Envy of the Birds, How Heavenly Estate, The Flavor of Metal, and Punch in the Flowers. Those are my favorites, but I could see this album growing on me with more and more listens, and I'm just glad that Death Cab are still putting out fantastic albums. But let us know what you think of this album. Drop down a comment to let us know what are your favorite songs, how would you rank it amongst the rest of the band's albums, and do you agree or disagree with my opinions? And that'll be it for this episode. Thank you for watching. And until next time, we hope you take care and you'll be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.